I used to take my daughter's toys and rip them to pieces to make as close as of a prototype as I can. I love
Yes.
domain names. I have hundreds of domain names because I feel like anytime I come up with something, I want to kind of capture it and come up with a name. And it's like it's your baby. You got to take the emotion out, put your business cap on, and make a decision based on what is the right thing, not what you're feeling.
Maybe you're not thinking big enough, but maybe you are thinking too big.
Then it doesn't matter who you are, right? You could be a doctor, lawyer, unemployed, finance, senior citizen, student. At some point, you're going to come up with an idea. Are you the one that's going to say, I woulda, coulda, shoulda 20 years ago? Or are you going to make it happen today?
All right, welcome back to the Daily Mastermind. George Wright III with your daily dose of inspiration, motivation, and education. And we have something very unique for you today. I'm really excited because I have been looking and not found someone that can help us with the topics we're going to talk about today. So let me give you a quick intro to this amazing individual. Brian, who I'm going to introduce in a second, he's an inventor, entrepreneur, public speaker. He's got 15 patents. He's got licensed products, ones that you probably see every day you didn't even realize is going to blow your mind. But he's the founder of Inventor Smart. I could go on and on. I'm going to have him give some of his accolades, but he's been featured on As Seen on TV, QVC, New York Times, Inventor Digest, multiple times author. And so I'm happy to have you here today. Brian Freed, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, George.
I tell you, man, two ships passing in the night a lot of times, but we are together and we're gonna drop some value bombs here. So let me start out, even though I kind of gave you a little intro, let me have you give us a quick idea. We're going to be talking today about inventions and taking people's ideas and making them tangible, and how do you make money with them, and how do you go to the next level with them and things. But you are by far the authority that I've found in this area from the research I've done, the conversations we've had. So share with me and our listeners your journey. What got you into this vein? Why are you so passionate about it? Give us that backstory before we get into some of the details.
Well, I think, George, when I first started to realize that I was an inventor, I started to look and see things that people were doing. I was a pretty good people watcher, and things that I was doing that kind of annoyed me, that said, you know what? I think that I'm onto something here. I continued to just jot down my ideas, had a pretty decent sized spreadsheet, started to categorize them and say, wait a second, is this only for me or is this for other people? Is there a big enough market for this? Or is it something niche that maybe I might make something on, but where's my opportunity? Where's that aha moment to say, you know what, this is something that I'm going to take to the next level? So I started to work on some ideas, and going through the motion, I started to make a lot of mistakes, which I realize now. And I had some successes, which I enjoyed. And then I started to get involved with a lot of groups and community and industry of the inventor. And people started to ask me for help because I had some levels of success. And it kind of turned into this whole thing of getting involved in this inventor world.
So what was there a first invention you did that you remember back and you're like, that was a thing that just like worked? I mean, because I'm sure like most inventors, you probably had all kinds of things that you didn't have work, but what was that first like big win or big idea?
Well, as I went through the process, things that I was doing on the keyboard, then I got married. So I watched my wife do things in the kitchen that I thought could be done a little bit differently, very polite. Then we had my daughter, Alana, and I started to see how toys could be different, how different things while you're raising your kid could be different. And again, I started to watch people, see what they do. How many steps does it take to end up doing this thing? Maybe I could do it better. So I just started to get into that groove of saying, you know what? This is not just for me, it's for other people. What do I do next? And as I started to go through those steps, I started to get into like this groove. Like anything else, you make a lot of mistakes and then you learn from them, challenge, problem, solution, all that stuff. Then it kind of turns into a habit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So let me do this because just to give people kind of a frame of reference, and for those of the listeners not watching on YouTube, you have to be a little descriptive. Give some examples because before our call, and we talked about some things that you've invented, just to give them an idea that it's not just tangible, but it's a little bit of everything. Give us some examples so people have a benchmark here.
Absolutely. So, one of the first ones that I actually brought to life was it's called the Balluna Band. It's You're not going to be able to purchase it today, but I'm just going back. Look,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
50 now, so I guess I started almost 20 something, almost 30 years ago. But it was a nylon wristband that had a metal D ring on the outside of it, and it had some Velcro, which otherwise known as lock and loop in the industry. So when you go to, I went to Madison Square Garden quite a bit. We had Nassau Coliseum, which is different these days, but you would buy like this $12, $15 Mylar balloon with Elmo or Cookie Monster or Princess or whatever on it. And by the time you put it on and get back to your seat, you can look up at the ceiling and you see every single balloon
Yeah. They're all there.
one.
Yeah.
So
And kids
that's
crying. Yeah.
right.
Right.
And it's not there's like there's no reason to have another like after intermission because all the kids are bawling, they're crying and upset. So I came up with this wristband to keep my daughter's balloon, the ribbon on the D ring. So when you take it on and off, it's also a weight so it doesn't fly away, but you could take it, you could put it on the wrist nice and easy. You don't have to cut off her circulation. You could put it on a belt buckle, on a carriage, stroller, whatever. So
Wow.
but again, that was something interesting, and I guess at this point, I learned that it's niche and a really inexpensive item, all the way to now, George. Like, for example, we unfortunately had, well, some unfortunate parts, but there's fortunate parts because there's a lot of people that did something and seized the opportunity of the pandemic. So for me, it was very difficult to get paper goods. Uh, I'm sure a lot of people had the same issue, and I was
For
trying to
sure.
get paper towel rolls all over the place. So what happened was, I started to get a little crazy with my paper towels because I cherished every paper towel sheet. I looked on the top and I realized that my paper towel roll was pretty dirty. It was dried up with orange juice or tomato sauce, wet, dried up. And I started to ask my friends and family, can you take a picture of the top of your paper towel roll? I'm just curious what it looks like. It was disgusting, George. So what
Wow.
I did was I said, you know what? I'm not the only one that has this issue. So here's my clean paper towel roll. Now I invented and I have a patent on this
Oh,
cap
geez.
that goes into the inner tube of the paper towel roll. And now when your hands are wet or dirty, you put it on top and you pull the sheet off, it stays clean and dry. So that's
Yeah,
the paper
just
towel
it getting
password.
wet, everyone has that problem. This is so
Right.
crazy because, and I know you have a gazillion ideas, but I got to make this point. I know that most people, now a lot of people have really amazing ideas, but most everyone goes, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you could do this? But they think, that could never, like, I could never get that done. That's like, that would, inventions is not something that the average person can do. What do you say to something like that? Because I know Michelle tells me all the time, she goes, that's a great idea. You should do something. I'm like that. You know how much work that takes. I'm not saying it doesn't take work, but what do you say to somebody that's got an idea, not a random idea, but has a great idea, and just maybe either doesn't know where to start or what to do or whatever? Like, what do you advise? What do you say to entrepreneurs like that?
The first thing I say, George, is it yours? I understand that you searched on Google on page one with your eyes closed because you didn't want to find it.
Yeah.
Right? Or you went down the aisle of Walmart or your favorite store and said, "Oh my gosh, it's not out there. I'm gonna be a gazillionaire. This is it. This is the one," right? But I would say that many people, and I tell this to pretty much everybody, is to do your research. There's
Yeah.
business owners and business people that are listening to this, and no matter what you've done your research before you put your time, money, energy, effort into it. And that's the same thing with an invention or an idea for a business, product, whatever. You do your due diligence, you do your
Mm.
research. What's going to make you different than anything else out there? Is it something that you should put your time, money, energy, effort into? And I know it's exciting. And a lot of people make decisions based on their emotions and not based on fact or doing the research. And that's one thing that I always say, George, is to
I
do your
love it.
research, right? It's
Yeah, and
important.
we're both marketers as well. And so it's funny because I say that to people a lot of times. They're like, I got this amazing idea, and they just go after it and they're spending money and they're doing whatever. And I said, I say things like, have you looked at what the competitors are there? Have you done your market research? Have you done so it's a measure twice, cut once, right? So I think that's great, very wise advice. I think people will learn the more they get to know you that um, it's not just a unrealistic thing to think you can make money with an invention or an idea, but it's super smart to start in the right place. So let's do that. And I wish, and look, guys, if you're listening to this, we're going to have all kinds of resources. So don't worry. We don't have time to dig into the tactics, but Brian's got all kinds of stuff for you to do that. But I do want to sort of help people to understand that you've learned over time that there are processes, there are things you can do. So how do you take an idea and build a business around an invention? Maybe could you sort of kind of help us make that a little bit more specific, or how do you vision it being an idea is a business, and where do you start?
George, I've been an inventor for many years, actually being an inventor coach and going through and listening to people. It's been over 18 years now, and people have had successes. People have had failures, which are lessons learned and challenges. And I have had a chance to listen to high profile people, interview them, and just kind of make me who I am today, to kind of be intuitive to when somebody comes to me with something, I can almost see where it's going. But you know
Mm,
what? Every person, every product, every idea is different. So when I talk to somebody, I figure out, who are you? Is this something that you have a full-time job and you're kind of doing this as a side hustle? Is this something that you want to just go for and be an entrepreneur? Do you not have time and you want to just have somebody else manufacture it, distribute it, and you earn a royalty from it? So I think it's really important to just kind of go through the perspective of what it is that you want to do, right? And how you want to do it. That's ultimately number one. And then I go back to where you are and then I help you to get to where you want to go. So ultimately, again, the first thing we were talking about, do your research. So a patent search with a patentability opinion is always good to do, but do your research first before you spend money on that. Then you want to figure out what it's going to look like, right? So I chicken scratch draw, whatever it is. I try to bring it to life somehow. I used to take my daughter's toys and rip them to pieces to make as close as of a prototype as I can. Find things that already exist to kind of make things a little easier along the way. So I would hire an engineer, a prototyper. I would get it to a point where I feel like I'm in a good spot. I might want to protect it with a provisional patent application, so I'm patent pending, or I might file a design patent that's ornamental, or I just go for the utility non-provisional patent application. So there's a lot of things. And then I
yeah,
want to trademark it.
yeah.
So you go through these things, and then it's like, okay, I did all this. Now, what do I do next? So, do I want to license it to earn royalties? People say, I want to sell my idea. Okay, well, sell what? You want to be able to have some sort of intellectual property. If I went to you, George, and you owned a clothing company, and I came up with something really unique, and I just showed you, and it has no intellectual property, you don't need to pay me. You can make it yourself, right? So if I'm going to give you something, I want to give you something that's going to give you a competitive advantage in the market. I want to give you some IP that you can rent the rights to. And as you sell them, you would pay me a royalty.
Yeah, this is something I want to pause you for 1 second because we talked about this a little before. And for the people listening to this episode, and they're business owners and entrepreneurs and CEOs and and things like the high achievers, but I want to make a clear distinction if you're listening. We're not just talking about having a thing that you want to invent. We're talking about the idea of creating not only a brandable asset as well as something that creates profit, as well as something that can create your lifestyle, but intellectual property. And what I love about how Brian thinks is he thinks about things and how you can lock down, value in the marketplace in a legally binding and specific way so that you can create more. So you may have a great product, for example, but there are so many pieces and parts that you can create intellectual property around. And Brian, I know we don't have a ton of time for this, but people sometimes get confused between patents and trademarks and license and things like this. Could you help us kind of differentiate this and how it applies to people with business and ideas?
Sure. Well, if we're talking about patents real quick, is it something that functions? Is it something that, like, for example, my collapsible egg tray, right? I had no room in my fridge one
Oh,
night,
it's
and
great.
I had a carton of eggs and there was one egg left. So that annoyed me. So I came up with a
Oh, I
collapsible
love
egg
it.
tray. You put your eggs in, and as you put your eggs out, there's that much space left. So I call it extra space. So this is a utility patent. That's why I'm showing this
Okay.
with a little prop of my invention here, extra space. But this is function, right? Otherwise, there's something that, like this paper towel topper, is a design. It's ornamental. Okay. So you can
What about
protect
the tongs? You showed me
the
some
tongues.
tongs.
Yep. The tongues is a utility patent because there's a function. This is an adjustable tongue. So there's regular tongues that are out there that have that piece that you pull up to lock the tongues on the bottom. I want to make sure everybody hears the
Yeah,
word
yeah,
tongues correctly, right?
tongs. Yeah.
So I made grooves in the top part. So now when you open up your tongues, you have adjustable tongues. So it's small, medium, and large opening. And now if you have a set of tongues out there and you have mine for the same price, you're going to want one that has some extra features on it, right?
So
And
that's one of the key things. Those little distinctions are not just about creating patents and licensing, folks. Listen to me. You're differentiating products in a very tangible way that bring more value to the marketplace. So now your product might be that, or your idea might be that to extend to other people's products. Keep going.
Absolutely. So, for example, like Priceline is a method, right? The Priceline, the way that you bid and it kind of goes through that whole thing, they have a patent, right, on the way that their process is of
Mm,
how you bid. There's other things that are out there, like let's say I'm working with this chiropractor that has a system that he kind of put together. So it doesn't, again, like you're saying, it doesn't always have to be a product. It could be a trade secret. It can be certain things like that. But then on the other side, like you're talking about building assets, building intellectual property, you can have a trademark. A trademark is a good word or phrase that's different, not just generic terms, but something that's going to make you different or recognized in the market in a certain class of goods. So we were talking earlier, I had t-shirts and backpacks and bags and stationery, all the different emoticons and acronyms that were outside of cell phones and computers. I trademark. People do that. I have product names. I trademark them in a certain class of goods. Once I use them in commerce, I could start right now. I could put a TM next to whatever it is that
mm.
that I call something. So you see a TM around, right? But when I send it to the trademark part of the US Patent and Trademark Office and I'm showing that I'm using it in commerce, you know that TM that you have? It turns into an R, a
Mm.
registered trademark. So that means that I'm putting you on notice that in my class of goods, I'm using this, I'm selling it outside of my state, and people should recognize that that's my brand or that's my trademark, right? You can have a
Yeah.
logo, you can have a word mark that you protect. And then there's copyrights, different types of artwork, different types of, board game designs. I use my copyrights for technical drawings of my inventions. There's a lot of different ways to be able to build assets, whether it's a product, a business, things that you're working on, and phrases that you're using.
Let me
It
ask you. So let me throw out a scenario. This is a daily mastermind evolution group scenario, and you tell me if I'm
okay,
following you, and the listeners can follow this as well. So, Evolution Group has a phoenix logo. It's a logo of a phoenix to represent unleashing your potential and creating your best life and things like this. And that logo can be trademarked, and once used in commerce, a registered trademark. But the system that maybe we take people, a 7-step system we take people through, that could be patented and there's value there, and then copyrighted on the type of things we're doing. But each of those are completely separate. Am I following you on that process?
I would say so. The thing with me though, George, I am not a patent attorney or agent,
Yeah.
so this is only my opinion, but it sounds pretty good what you're saying. Now, you have that Phoenix in a certain class of goods for what you're doing. But if I want to take that Phoenix and I want to put it on a milk carton, I could because it's in a different class of goods.
That was
So
literally going to be my next question. So
yeah,
I have a registered trademark on the Phoenix, and I have a registered trademark on Daily Mastermind. And this is granted by the government. I got the certificates and things like this, but it's in a class. And so the question I have for you that some might be thinking is, does it make sense to, and can you even get it granted in other areas? You see people show up on Shark Tank all the time and they go, we got a trademark or a patent. I think patent's a little different, but trademarks and things, is the devil in the detail? Meaning you might have it in one area, but someone can come and scoop that up in another area. And do you recommend somebody tries to do it in every area they can, or does that really matter?
I personally think that it should be focused on what it is that you're working on. If
Okay.
I use your Phoenix and I'm selling microphones, which is in front of me, it doesn't really matter. I'm not confusing the
Got it.
consumer. It's another part of intellectual property. It's not necessarily classified as but uh, the domain name, right? I love
Yes.
domain names. I have hundreds of domain names because I feel like anytime I come up with something, I want to kind of capture it and come up with a name. And it's like it's your baby, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to be able to call it and look at it and just start talking. But you know, before I start to do that, it's pretty simple to do a trademark search. You
Okay.
can easily do a domain name search. And you can also use your name that you're thinking about, or in these days, you can use AI, you can use different search engines to be able to now search for an image, and you can
Yeah.
see where people are using your logo.
Guys, listen, this is so important what he's saying. And there's detail in here that you're going to have to follow up on, because I'll give you a tangible example. So we opened a clinic in Scottsdale. I'm not even going to give you the name of it because it's an optimization clinic for, peptides and health and things like this. But you can search the name from a company standpoint. You can search the URL and you can search these things. But if you don't do your due diligence, because we found there were some competitors in the marketplace that had ranked really heavily on Google. Forget the URL, forget the name, but they had ranked already, that would have made it difficult in our marketplace to compete. So we made an adjustment, right? So some people don't think that. They think of a great company name and they don't research the URL. They think of all these other things. Question I have for you, random question. Can you trademark a URL? If you own the URL, is it valuable to trademark a URL too in your name, or is it not matter if you have the URL?
Are you using a logo around your domain name? George, what I like to do, and everybody has different ways of doing things and looking at things differently. But for me, I love word marks
Mm,
because word marks, you can wrap any logo around the word mark. But if you
nice.
make it a specific logo in the way that it looks and the way the characters are within, then that's the only one that you're stuck to. So I
Wow.
like doing word marks because I can wrap it around any way I want, as long as the word mark is used on my products or my service. You're talking probably about service marks, right?
Hmm.
Those things are important. But I mean, realistically, if you have a domain name that you're using, you may want to put it on your product. Most likely, you're going to use a name of your product. The domain name is kind of yours. Nobody's gonna copy your domain name,
Yeah.
otherwise they'll be sending traffic to your domain name,
Yeah.
which isn't a bad thing for you, but I think it's more about the name protecting
I like
and
it.
yeah.
Guys, for some of you, that's a multi-million dollar idea right there. You have no idea. I have a URL that now I use as my social media bio, but it's going to be the launch of our new academy called jointheevolution.com. But what you're saying is it would be important to do wordmark as well, not just URL and things. So listen, I love this topic. And so we're going to stop with the details and strategies for a second. What I want to do is I want to pivot to this idea for the sake of time of, what challenges did you face? Because, guys, one of the reasons you go to someone like Brian is so that you can save yourself a whole lot of time and energy and a lot of you're going to still have to go through challenges yourself, but you can save time by having mentors and things to help you that have already gone down that path. But what are some of the biggest challenges you've overcome? Do you have a story of something that the listeners might enjoy? Or what are the challenges that you've had to face that people with a great idea are going to have to be ready for?
It's trust. I would
Mm,
say trust and who to go to and what the experience is gonna be like. These days, there's a lot of different ways to learn and get help, but some people just don't wanna necessarily do the research. So, let's say you do a quick Google search and you could do a sponsored ad, and the first thing that comes up, you click on, and you tell somebody your idea, and you feel like you're committed to them. Because no matter if your idea is great or it sucks, they'll tell you how great it is to keep you
yeah.
going through the funnel, right? For me, I think trust is really important. I understand people uh, from an inventor perspective because I've been there, done that. I know what they're going through. And I feel like I always make sure that I tell people like it is. I'm not the guy to pat you on the back and make you feel good and tell you everything's great and wonderful. If it's the last time that I ever speak to you, I'm okay with that. At least I know I did a good job. I could go to sleep at night. So, look, George, whether it's this, inventing, or anything in your life, you're making decisions. How are you doing it? And I said it earlier. Is it based on emotion or based on a business decision?
Mm,
You got to take the emotion out, put your business cap on, and make a decision based on what is the right thing, not what you're feeling.
yeah.
Okay. And as close as possible as you can get to the real thing of fact, that's what it is. So if there's an idea that's exactly out there the way that yours is, then if you're going to continue, then you're infringing on somebody else's intellectual property. Or if you're not, then it's in the public domain and anybody can make it. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to license it? Well, you don't have any IP, right? It's somebody else's. Do you want to manufacture it? You don't have any IP. So if it's great and it's selling well, then I can make the same thing too. So the point is, George, that do your due diligence. If you're building a house, you're probably going to get a couple references of other and look at their work, find out, talk to people, but people just they just want to keep going because they're emotional and they're not making
Yeah.
make better business decisions. That's my lesson.
I love that, and guys, I want to double down and highlight what he just said. And he said so much. You might have to go back through this episode because trust is huge on both ends of it, right? Because people trust when they shouldn't, and I've known many people that have trusted because there was someone that had expertise and promised the world and told you your idea was amazing, and they stole their idea or they had some things. So when it comes to trust, there are some very specific ways that you can protect your intellectual property while you're doing it. And those are things, that you'll have to learn. But then there's this whole emotional component because everybody knows that you're emotionally attached to your ideas. And so you don't want to do the research and find out that somebody's there. Or when you do, you're so unwilling to disconnect from the thought you had that you don't see the forest through the trees. And so you have to learn to manage those emotions and be smart, be logical. That's one of the things I liked about our conversation, Brian. And you're a very unique individual because most inventors and idea people that I've met are not also the logical, tactical business individuals. And you cover both gambits. Most of them are the creators, the visionaries, and they need someone operationally to help lock them down. But I think trust, emotions, and specifics and doing due diligence, that's all super important. So what I want to just really get this one question in. What do you advise people to do as opposed to just being trusting out in the marketplace? Like what do they do to sort of protect themselves in the early stages if they have an idea and they're out there trying to figure out who should I talk to, who shouldn't I? What's the best way for them to protect themselves in their idea?
Well, whoever you're talking to when you start, if it's not protected, if you didn't file a provisional patent application or non-provisional or design or whatever, have them sign a non-disclosure agreement. That means that
Yep.
when you talk to me about your idea, I'm not going to talk to anybody about it without your permission. I think also, George, when you just kind of mentioned those things, another point is that you have to be real with what your idea is about. Like, what's your window of opportunity? And I kind of say this quite a bit, but if you came up with a golf ball, George, that does all these amazing tips and tricks and oh my gosh, it's incredible, right? You're on the golf course. Holy, everybody in the world is going to want my golf ball, right? When you step out of the golf course and you ask people, do you play golf? Do you play golf? Not everybody plays golf. So you have to think about your window of opportunity. Is this something that's niche? Yes, there's a lot of people that play golf, but it's not for everyone. What is your window of opportunity? Is it something that you're going to put your
Mm.
money in, your time, money, energy, effort into, and get some kind of return? And real quick, George, this is one of my other inventions. It's called full ties. So I started off with a kind of like, the bread bag. There's the
Yeah.
twist tie and the plastic tab that comes on. That annoyed me. I didn't know which way to turn the twist,
Well, that annoyed me
right?
yesterday. I literally had a
See?
test, and then they end up on your counter and they're everywhere. Yeah, I got you.
Right. So that annoyed me. I decided to come up with this loop, the silicone loop here that has a push button. You pull it up and it seals a bag tight. Now, if I just sold this for bread, maybe you like bread, maybe you don't like bread. But I said, you know what? What if this was something that you can use in the freezer, those freezer bags that are left open
Mm.
in your cereal bag, right? That's in the box, right? In your pantry. So I started to go into all these different things. And at the end of the day, and this is why this was a big hit on QVC, how many people have a kitchen? Ding, 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 right? So just that's also a really strong lesson is be real with what you're going to put in and what your return is going to be. Somebody comes to me with the women's shoe. I don't think everybody's going to want a women's shoe. So here's your window of opportunity. I have my two hands wide open.
Mm.
Now I'm cutting it in half, right? Men, women mostly, right? And out of that, how many different designs of shoes are there? How many tips and tricks of shoes that are going to be out there? So yes, there's an opportunity, but I might love your twisting heel, but it doesn't have the right look. So I'm not going to buy it. So that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, like the window of opportunity to figure and measure. And sometimes people come to me with something for a specific niche. And I look at it, I'm like, you know what? That's great. But I think it might be number 4 on the list. What if it was number 1? Ding, ding, ding. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
guys, this. We talked about this just before our show. We talked about the fact that sometimes, regardless of the fact you might be emotional, sometimes you can't see not only just the flaws in an opportunity, but the opportunity size itself yourself. So that's why it helps to have people outside of that, people like Brian, people like whoever, that can help you to really get real about what is your real opportunity. And maybe maybe you're not thinking big enough, but maybe you are thinking too big. And so I do think that's great advice. I think that's really, really good advice. Now, I know what most people listening to this episode are thinking because we're up on our time. They're thinking, "Oh my gosh, you guys covered so much stuff. I don't even know what I'm going to do." And so, have no fear. Have no fear. Brian, I've already vetted this out. Brian has a ton of resources on his website. That's the place to go if you want to connect with Brian, if you want to kind of just get content, knowledge, direction. And so, Brian, I'm assuming, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the best place for people to connect with you, or to maybe even go another level of if they have an idea, they're trying to figure things out, is your website. So it's brianfried.com. So it's BrianFried.com. Is that the best place for them to connect with you? And what else would you recommend as far as like next steps if somebody, or a strategy of something, if somebody has an idea, what do they do next?
thank you, George. I love talking and connecting with people. You're right on the website, brianfree.com. That's a great one. A lot of times people spell my first name wrong. They spell it Brain, then I'm brain fried. So it's Brian. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. If you go to LinkedIn, you put in Brian Fried Inventor. I also have my app, which I launched in October for Inventors. It's our very own social media. There's networking, collaboration, resources, all kinds of tools there to help you with your invention, innovation journey. And that's Inventor Smart Community on Google Play and Apple App Store. So yeah, those are the best places to reach me. And I'm open to chatting.
That's awesome. Well, I tell you, I wanted to do this episode most specifically because, and I want to be real clear with the listeners here. A lot of you have ideas that you maybe don't feel like could amount to anything, and you're hesitant, you're waiting. Don't do that. And a lot of you have amazing businesses that could stand to really tangibilize your IP and the systems, the processes, the products, the things you have. Protect yourself on those ideas. But ultimately, there's a lot of opportunity in this area, and people get scared off by things like taxes and legal and things like these. But this is an area that could take creativity and really build and grow your value in the marketplace, build and grow your opportunity. Maybe it's simply you want to create a better life and you've got some real knowledge, because everyone's unique and everyone has some, you might have an amazing idea. You just don't know where to start. So I want you to be thinking about that, because I truly believe, you can create the life, and it's never too late to start creating the life that you're meant to live, but you've got to take action. You've got to figure out where to start. This is a great way to do that, whether you have a business, you're thinking about a business or whatever. So Brian, I appreciate you being on the show today. I know we're going to be doing a lot more follow-up in the future. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, George. Thank you very much. And it doesn't matter who you are, right? You could be a doctor, lawyer, unemployed, finance, senior citizen, student. At some point, you're going to come up with an idea. Are you the one that's going to say, I woulda, coulda, shoulda 20 years ago? Or are you going to make it happen today? And that's what we're here to do. So thank you, George, for the opportunity.
Oh man, couldn't have been said any better. So thank you. So guys, listen up. Make sure that you check us out on the Daily Mastermind on Facebook, Instagram, pretty much everywhere. You know the drill. But hit up and connect with Brian. I mean, very, very few times do you have an opportunity to connect with someone so connected, so successful in a particular area. So do that. We look forward to talking with you tomorrow. Once again, this has been the Daily Mastermind. My name is George Wright, and I'm your host. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.